Okay, everyone, welcome to this episode of your Freedom Hub's Cash Patient webinar series. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with Charles Froman. We are sponsored by a number of interesting organizations. And again, we are the Disruptors Intersection, and we're totally looking for all those activists and entrepreneurs that are trying to twist this world into a better place. We definitely have a problem in the healthcare world, as you can see, and we're all about trying to break the back on that. And tonight's no exception in terms of what we're going to learn about. We are also, as I said, sponsored by a variety of interesting organizations. One of the keys is this WOW app here, which is our way to connect consumers straight to doctors in a cash direct way. So either using your own money or other mechanisms that supply money into the app, but now you'll be able to find everybody, kind of like pulling up to the corner and seeing all the different gas stations, and you can immediately see the various prices and start to figure out where to go. We've got a special website set up for that occasion we'll talk about. You do want to visit us on our main website. This is the short an acronym for Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom.com. And we are archiving all these videos. It's the same video, but we're up on 4 separate different channels, and you'll pick the one you like the best. And please, we would encourage you to subscribe to all of them anyway, just because we'd like to get some boosts on these channels and help, get our circulation kicking along a little bit. And then on top of that, we actually run some other shows we think you might be interested in, and here are the various channels to take a look at them. And please subscribe to these as well. You'll get notices whenever any of those videos come out. Now, as I said, we did have that special site for you to come to, as I showed before, so you can come on in here and get some more information, start finding how you can take control of your health care. And again, it is a revolution. So when you come on our site that I showed a minute ago, this is the health tab, and here you are. This is what you'll find out, a revolution in healthcare. Now, if you come to the home page, this is where you want to navigate a little bit. So on the home screen, you'll see that we're on one of these webinars, and lo and behold, here's our tab for that purpose. When you click on that, it'll take you over here to the page. And what you'll discover is a nice little intro, a breakout every week of who's coming up on the 2 Wednesday events, both at 4 and at 7. And then also on the Thursday one, which is the financial one about getting control of your money and working out a different path than what the banks and the credit card companies all had in store for you. And then, of course, we want you to see the future guests coming up. And again, here are all the links to those various sites. You can watch these in the past. And then also you're going to want to continue the conversation. And that's a big part of this. But before we get there, here's a scan through on the various channels, give you an idea of the breadth of what's on there. And the stuff goes back for a long time. And it doesn't matter if you watch one that's a couple weeks old or a month and a half old or a couple years old, they're all going to be excellent. And typically, sadly, a lot of them are still very current about problems that still are not solved. And then, as I said, we want to continue the conversation. So after you've heard about something that you really, really like and you want to keep going or help further the cause, you'll come on over here and tap into the right person, and off you'll go. So let's say, as an example, we want to follow up on Darren's situation here. Well, here we're going to get to see all about the videos that he's got, the links, PowerPoint blog, how to participate, everything that you're interested in. And then lastly, if you're on there and you come over here to freedom, you'll see there's fighting for freedom. Well, lo and behold, when you come here, this is another critical page you need to be aware of. We feature all the issues and actions that are most important, and sadly, you need to click on every one of them because they're all pertinent and they're issues that need to be dealt with. And then all the different organizations that are trying to help further the idea of your individualized freedom, and then some great videos from the past. So as you can see, there's an awful lot here to see. So you'll come and take a look. But in the meantime, let's dig into today, because as I said, we got an exciting little rundown for today, and I'm going to give Charles the floor to give us an introduction on today's guest.
Thanks, Jeff, and welcome, Gideon. As Jeff and I got featured in, thank you. And as Jeff and I got featured in Forbes magazine for packaging a health plan with sharing and tax advantage savings accounts that creates cash shopping patients with the assistance of a concierge, we really got to know leaders in healthcare that were available to our cash shopping patients. And some of those providers are available not just within the US borders, but internationally, overseas. And so when our members go overseas, all they need are 2 things. 1, to have the medical bill in US dollars, and 2, to have it in English. And then the challenge becomes, how do we incent our members to use these providers overseas, which offer definitely a better deal financially? But a new dynamic has really spurred medical tourism in our mind, and that is alternative care that often is not available because of U.S. laws. And that's where Gideon comes in. So a year or so ago, we did have Christina de Mores from the International Medical Tourism Chamber of Commerce, and we also had David Vequist, who is at a San Antonio college studying medical tourism. So we were really excited to meet Gideon as a real-world professional running an operation in Tijuana for cancer patients, where a big growth opportunity lies for that disease, because in the U.S. it's chemotherapy or radiation, and increasingly people are not going to just want to limit themselves to those therapies for cancer, or even chronic disease or regenerative medicine that Gideon does at Verita, his company in Mexico and in Thailand. So a while ago, we had Roy Dittman talk about conscious pregnancy, and he referred us to Gideon as a possible guest. And so we're really excited to hear Gideon's presentation, how to save money, how to get better care just over the border, not very far from America. So that's our intro, Jeff.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, everybody. So I'm here in Tijuana, Mexico. It's a very modern city. Those of you that came here 20 years ago and watch Narcos and all those sort of things probably have a different idea. But I'm between HSBC, Walmart, and AT&T, and it's a pretty modern place. I've lived here for 3 years, and everything has been smooth and happy, and it's a really good place to live. So if you have any conceptions or preconceptions, then it certainly doesn't apply to Tijuana. It probably did 10, 20 years ago, but these days everything is quite clean and tidy. And the clinic is 5 minutes from the border. We're in the business district, and it's pretty well organized. So I'm actually going to share my screen. So I'm with a company called Verita, Verita, and we're part of the Verita Healthcare Group. So let me share my screen, and let me just see how that works. I think that's it. Share. Okay. I'm not sure if I've shared. I'm not sure if I've shared the single screen or the switchable screen. It's the single screen. It's the switchable screen. Very good. Okay, so the Verita Healthcare Group started in 2005 or 2006 in Singapore, and it was founded by an English gentleman who I was acquainted with. And his idea and concept was that as the technologies, the medical technologies, progressed and changed, then the outlook for advances was going to not fit in well to the regulatory and clinical trial network format that had been built up for the last 50 years. The new treatments that were coming through, the new breakthroughs, this was just when the genome was being sequenced, and a lot of other breakthroughs in regenerative medicine and immunotherapies, they were starting to become interesting. And he took the long view that the current structure of most first world healthcare regulatory formats were not well equipped to deal with these new medicines, these new treatments. And so he started the Verita Healthcare Group with the goal of early commercialization of safe and effective breakthrough technologies and treatments. And of course, when you're doing these kind of things, then the regulatory framework is important. And so although we were in Singapore, we did have a clinic in Singapore, the regulations there are extremely tight, tighter than the US, and they're very conservative. The obvious move was to look to a medical tourism area where the regulations were less strict, but also there was a steady flow of patients and the infrastructure to look after them. So in about 2010, he bought a small business in Thailand, and then in 2013 we bought a company called Global Stem Cells, and I moved there to run that business. That was my first healthcare business. I'd been in other businesses, but that was my first healthcare. I was very interested in stem cells and regenerative medicine, and I fixed my shoulder with Verita before joining, and it got fixed perfectly. So I moved there. We then very quickly got into the alternative cancer treatment business, and also other chronic care, condition care. And I was in Thailand. I set up the businesses there, and I moved to Mexico in 2017. So Tijuana is the World Center of Alternative Cancer Treatment. There have been clinics here for 50 years, and there are at least a dozen reasonably well-known clinics, and of those dozen, about 5 or 6 I would consider to be high-standard international institutions, of which Verita Life is one of them. So our primary initial business is for cancer treatment. So when we talk about medical tourism, you have to ask the question, why is a patient going to consider leaving the United States or Canada and coming to Mexico? The differences between the United States and Canada are quite interesting, because in Canada, there's Health Canada, which is essentially socialized medicine, but it's so bad that actually 1/3 of our patients, when there was no COVID, came from Canada. And these are people that aren't even making the choice between insurance and no insurance. They're just saying, I just don't want to be involved at all. And so that does show that that patients are willing to make important and challenging decisions and travel long distances if they feel that it's worth it. So the advantages of medical tourism for very serious and life-threatening diseases are number one, the treatments that are available. The treatments that we offer for cancer are mostly available individually in individual clinics, but very few clinics can pull them all together, and there are a lot of restrictions on how they can use them, how they can advertise them. And so the good thing about Mexico is that we can easily pull everything together. An example would be we have a machine from Germany, which is a local hypothermia machine for cancer treatment. It costs about $250,000. And in Germany, there are 3,000 of these devices. It's considered standard oncological care. And the only reason that it's not been approved in the US is it's not expensive enough. It's just, it doesn't come with the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they can charge for other treatments. And so it's never taken off. So there are articles like that. There are also cost benefits. Salaries and costs in Mexico are much lower. So we can offer similar treatments for a half to a third of the price. And then another interesting area in development is that the expertise hub that has been, so it says here my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me okay, Charles?
Sound perfect.
Okay, sorry, it just came up on the screen, internet was unstable. Very good. So the expertise factor has become very interesting. So, I mean, here in Tijuana, there's 50 years of alternative cancer treatment. Every single staff member that I hired had previously worked in a similar cancer treatment clinic. And the immunotherapies that we offer, there are 4 different laboratories that offer immunotherapy production here in Tijuana. And there are only 2 in the whole of the United States. And they are very reluctant to do commercial work. And the pricing is, the differences are extraordinary. So we offer immunotherapy at a retail price of $10,000. And in the US, it would be somewhere between $100,000 to $120,000. Even in Germany, where the process is the same and it's approved, it's about $35,000 to $40,000. And so there's this symbiotic relationship where when a hub is created, then the expertise begins to take on its own life. And so alternative cancer treatment in Tijuana is by far the best in the world. And that is something that's quite hard to communicate to patients, but we certainly try. Another good example would be stem cells and stem cell research. When stem cells were banned back in the Bush Junior years, then that advantage was lost to the US. It's of course been regained, but stem cell technology and development in Guadalajara, which is about 3 hours south of Mexico, is one of the leaders in the region. And so we can get stem cells better than can be purchased anywhere in the US for less than half the price. And we test them regularly. We have laboratories that confirm this. And so there's some of the advantages. So when a patient is considering where they should have treatment, there's the very obvious conditions. If they want bariatric surgery, if they want dental work, then it's a pretty narrow cost benefit analysis. There isn't much complexity to it, and if they're okay with crossing the border, then it is straightforward. When you look at more in-depth, more chronic conditions or acute conditions that are more complicated, then an interesting factor comes into play. One of the big challenges that we've noticed for the US healthcare system especially, but it happens in similar systems around the world, is that there's very little cross-speciality communication. If you're sick, then you see a specialist, and that specialist looks at their specialist area, and they don't consider the whole, they don't consider what is now called functional medicine. It's extremely hard and extremely difficult for patients to have care that looks at a holistic system. And you start to hear about holistic systems, you start to hear about the popularity of understanding of Chinese medicine, the importance of gut health to other disciplines, but it's so lacking in chronic care. We get cancer patients that are so sick from failed internal medicine care, completely unrelated to their cancer, that it's criminal. It happens in our clinic at least monthly, that we have a patient come in that's debilitated either in a wheelchair or almost unable to hobble along. They have to be ambulatory in some way, otherwise we can't take them because we're a day clinic. But they're in pretty bad shape. We fill them with a bunch of vitamins, give them a few other treatments. 2 days later, they're bouncing around, and everyone in the clinic is like, "My goodness, what did you do to them?" And all we did was just look at their whole body system before we've even started treating the cancer. So one of the big advantages for medical tourism and for patients considering care abroad is that when you come to pretty much any serious clinic in Mexico, then they don't just treat the condition that you're there for. They look at your whole systemic issue and your internal medicine, and there are a lot of benefits of that, and you don't pay extra for it. It's a great difference. It's not so easy to communicate, and it's not so easy to prove, but it certainly does happen. So that's covered the expertise and the treatments. I'd like to go a little bit more into examples of the kind of treatments that might be available. I don't know if my screen is still sharing. Let me try it.
Pop it back up again.
Okay, I think that's it. So here is an example of which is a epidural stimulation device. Can you see that scrolling?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So this device is a pain management device, and it was first used by the the Christopher Reeve Foundation, and they did 4 patients. They inserted a device into this to spinal cord injury patients that were paralyzed, not paraplegic, but paraplegic, and results. And the doctor in Thailand that worked with us, I can do this, but let's give them some stem cells, give them a lot of rehab, and so they started doing that. And then 4 years later, there's 72 patients, and Verita is the world leader in this procedure. Here's a hockey player, Canadian hockey player. 1% of the patients involved with their movements. About half of them can stand. None of them can walk unassisted, but their autonomic functions increase 20 to 80%, large variable. Even patients that had injury 5 or more years ago. This is the control panel that actually sends the signals. Here's an X-ray of the device implanted, and that is the charge pad, I think, for the device. So the procedure, when the Reeves Foundation did it, was $2.5 million. We charge $110,000, which the device is, I think, $30,000. The patients receive several hundred million stem cells intricately into the spine or intravenously. And we have just done our first 3 patients in Guadalajara with an orthopedic surgeon partner there. And so we anticipate that demand from North America is going to be very significant. And if you had this procedure in the US now, you could even look at it for less than $500,000. So the patients are paying 110, 120, depending on a few other variables. And this is a great example of what medical tourism can do. If I move on to the boxes, okay. If I move on to Verita Life, these are our cancer treatments. This tells us this will tell you something about, that's not what I want to show you. No, sorry, I haven't got the screen up. Maybe it'll come up. So I wanted to show you the type of treatments that we do, just because I don't want to make it into a sales pitch, but I want you to understand what the extra value of treatments in a holistic center can bring. That's what I wanted to bring. Okay, so when you go for conventional care in a cancer case, then the options are radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and surgery. And that's the equivalent of a hand grenade. And the idea, aside from the surgery, is to kill the cancer and try not to kill the patient. Well, cancer is always a failure of the immune system. If the immune system is getting ahead of the cancer, then a cancer will not form a solid tumor or a presented cancer. And so the problem with conventional care, the challenge is that when you're killing the cancer cells, you're also hurting the immune system to the extent that if and when the cancer returns, which is at least half the time, then the immune system has even less chance of defeating it. And also the other problem with conventional care is that the cells that remain, sometimes a very small number, are the ones that didn't respond to the therapy in the first place, and they're the ones that divide and come back with a stronger form of cancer. That's why they constantly have to rotate chemotherapy drugs. So when you come to Verita Life or any cancer treatment center, serious cancer treatment center in Mexico, then they will do something similar. So we have ways to kill the cancer cells. They're not as powerful individually as either chemotherapy or radiotherapy, but in a combination, they are reasonably successful. Then we look at rebuilding the health of the patient, and trying to make their overall systemic response availability good. Then we detox the patients. Cancer divides, and the reason a cancer cell forms is that the division isn't perfect. It's a mutated cell. So if you have an unhealthy environment for cell division, and all our cells are dividing every day, then that is more likely to either cause a cancer or have a continued treatment. One of the reasons there's so much increase in cancer today is the environment, and it's very clearly demonstrated and studied. So we do treatments that would be considered some alternative. If you talk to an MD from a conventional background, then they'll say chelation is unnecessary. You know, the body can remove its own heavy metals. But if you do a biopsy on a person and on a cadaver and you look for heavy metals, you'll find them. So there is some dispute. We take a reasonably scientific line on these things, but we do focus on detoxification. And then the main difference is that we're boosting the immune system. We give as many different ways to boost the immune system as we can. Some of them are very sophisticated immunotherapies that I talked about, which are taken from the patient's own blood. Antigens in the blood are used to train dendritic cells in the laboratory. Then those cells are given back to the patient to boost the fight. And then other supplements and lots of ways to boost the immune system. The idea is that we get ahead of the cancer, try and reduce it as much as possible, make the patient strong and healthy enough, detox them so their system is clean enough, and then boost the immune system so that they can then have a chance of beating the cancer themselves and remaining ahead of the cancer with not only an immune system that hasn't been specifically weakened, but is strong. And this kind of approach to healthcare is very hard to find outside of Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, where they look at the whole. It's very hard to find in the US, and that's one thing that I'd really like to get across, is the option to look outside of the specialty and the subspecialty in giving treatment. So another area that is going to be quite interesting for the medical tourism is related to Roy Dittman, who was on a month or two ago. He's a natural fertility and perinatal specialist, and he is in the process. In fact, he just sent me his presentation today, and we're going to be opening a natural fertility clinic here in Tijuana. So that involves understanding the internal medicine and detoxification problems that couples have, and trying to clean them up and make them healthier and more virile and fertile. But also it involves direct injections of stem cells into the genitals, and that is pretty well established procedure for at least 10 years. And so the idea of crossing the border, having a fertility treatment, it's private, it's inexpensive, and we think that is going to be quite a popular treatment, especially given Dr. Dittman's reputation. You know, he has 20 years plus experience with fertility, and the addition of stem cells into the process is quite well studied. It's quite well published. It's not perfect, but it is reasonably well published, and so we're very optimistic about that. And from a commercial point of view, IVF is not covered under most insurances anyway, and you know, patients are paying enormous sums to try and get pregnant, and so we think that is a pretty attractive proposition for medical tourism. Another big area that I'd like to discuss now that we're onto the subject of stem cells is chronic disease, which is incredibly prevalent in the US. I mean, there are just, if you pick any autoimmune disease, there are 1 million there are 1 million rheumatoid arthritis sufferers. There are 1.5 million Lyme sufferers. The numbers are just extraordinary. And conventional medicine has very little to offer them other than immunosuppressants, mass doses of antibiotics, and basically, a 10-year cycle of not really being able to do anything other than address the symptoms and not really make any progress with the underlying condition. And a lot of these patients end up with liver and kidney problems and just generally are quite miserable. By the miracle of regenerative medicine and stem cells, that immunomodulatory failing can be addressed. And so the idea of coming to Mexico for a few weeks and having an intensive treatment, including stem cells, is becoming popular. And so we also do treat Lyme disease and chronic autoimmune conditions, rheumatoid arthritis, diabetes type 1. It's not as successful as we'd like, but there are the possibility for significant improvements is there. And we basically say to patients that, look, if you can spare the money, $20,000, $30,000, and if it works, it's going to work, and if it doesn't, it's not going to work, then it's worth a try. And that's with diabetes. With some of the other conditions, it's much more likely to be effective. And of course, with regenerative medicine, one of the big advantages is that there are no side effects. We do permission and caution the patients very, very carefully that, as with all medical procedures, there's no guarantee. But it's quite interesting, just as a side note, and anyone who's involved in regenerative medicine or talking about regenerative medicine should be consenting their patients very, very carefully. The signaling ability of stem cells and exosomes and regenerative medicine components is not 100%. And sometimes the communication just doesn't happen, it doesn't work, and nothing happens or very little happens. And the patients just essentially, they've wasted their money and then they go home and nothing happens. And so it's very important to inform patients in advance. That percentage rate varies from 5 to 20%, depending on the procedure. In some cases, for example, diabetes type 1, it's up at about 40% of just non-response. But when you compare that to conventional medicine and the concept of side effects and complications, then as long as we can explain it properly, then the patients are happy to accept it. So I'd like to move on now to regulations. One of the very interesting aspects of Mexico is 2 years ago, they introduced a regenerative medicine license from the FDA equivalent, which is called COFEPRIS. It's the same as the US FDA. And so regenerative medicine is fully regulated in Mexico. There are 28 licenses in Mexico. We have one. And under that license, we have to follow certain procedures. We have to report outcomes. We can only buy stem cells from government registered laboratories, and it's not the strictest process you ever saw. It's not too onerous, but the regenerative medicine license is unique in the whole world, that commercially you can offer and advertise stem cells, and you can not have to worry about the grayness that plagues the industry in other countries. So that's a huge advantage and a great maneuver by the Mexican health authorities, and they are quite rapidly weeding out the inevitable rogue organizations or clinics that either don't follow the rules or don't buy the stem cells from the right laboratories. And I predict that within 2 to 3 years, Mexico will overtake the US as a center for stem cells. It is possible that the FDA get their act together. They're vacillating, they give all these warnings, and then they allow, and then they have these consultation periods. And so far, it's not really been effective in controlling the quality. We know that the quality of allogenic stem cells, i.e. stem cells from a donor, available in the US is not very good. The autologous procedure, which means taking a patient's own fat and processing the cells in the office, is okay. That's working reasonably well, but the future of this is not from the patient's own cells. The future is from injectable allogenic cells. If you don't have to have an invasive procedure, then it's an advantage. At some point in the next 5 years, then there will be more understanding as to which sources of stem cells are better for exactly which conditions. But at the moment, there isn't that much in it. And our experience and observation is that aside from orthopedic conditions, i.e. joints, then there isn't that much to choose. For joints, your own cells are still superior. Okay. I think that covers all my basic points. Shall we throw this open to questions, Charles?
Fair enough. This is Jeff. That was quite
Or
good.
Jeff. Hello, Jeff.
Yeah, hello. That was very good. Thank you. That was an awful lot of information there that you threw out at us. It's great to see how much is going on. And of course, just like you had to kind of set it up about what everyone thinks of the town that you're in, it's definitely not what anyone thinks. And the world has moved along so far in so many ways, and America's so sheltered, and sadly we are all so inward looking. As clever of a nation as we are, we definitely don't know what goes on in the bulk of the rest of the world invariably. So I appreciate you letting us get a glimpse. I got Charles' hand up here. Let's see what he's got up his sleeve.
Thanks, Jeff. And yes, Gideon, fantastic presentation. I love the detail because, I've got to think that increasingly families are going to want to know alternative options for cancer. And so many folks have heard about Tijuana and all the treatments available there. So to see someone like you there presenting the details of it is very helpful. And of course, the stem cell opportunities for chronic disease and now infertility, that's great. Tell me, if you would, the challenges you've had that we have discussed getting large employer plans to send their employees to you. Now, there's been some good work with big employers sending their folks to ambulatory surgical centers across a few states, like the Keith Smith Surgical Center in Oklahoma. So there is that willingness to travel for good care. What about over the border to Tijuana? And then the second question, I'll follow up. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Gideon?
very good. Yes. Well, employers who are, as I understand the question, you're talking about self-insured that are opting out. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes. So their biggest challenge is a perception challenge that they're not shortchanging their employees. And so what we have tried to do so far, not very successfully, is to get the employers to present the options before the need occurs. And that is the number one goal, where the employees understand the options. They have a chance to ask questions. They have, presentations or an opportunity to look into it. Once they're already sick, then it's pretty difficult for the employer to say, well, okay, you can try this in Mexico, and the employee just thinks, well, you're going to save money. What's in it for me? And some employers are incentivizing, but again, it's the same thing. People are very touchy. It's a difficult topic at any time, and when patients are actually in need of care, that's already too late to introduce the concept to them.
And as a follow-up, if I could, Jeff, Gideon, what about the COVID lockdown and what that has done to your industry in the context of international business having slowed down worldwide, not just with medical tourism? How has that made things challenging, and how do you plan to rise out of that?
Yeah, it's been a difficult period for the group. You know, we have clinics in several countries, and most of them have been on lockdown. One of the unfortunate scenarios is that the kind of countries that are attractive for medical tourism as a business are also the kind of countries that have quite strict employment laws, and so there isn't the flexibility that you might hope. And so, for example, here in Mexico, you know, we have 22 employees in the chronic condition care clinic in Verita Life, and we haven't managed to reduce that at all, because if the severances are so high, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months of pay, that you know you can't really maneuver. And Thailand is the same. Australia is better, but still not very good. And so it's been on a fixed cost basis quite painful. Unfortunately, the numbers are down. Thailand was completely closed. Australia is currently completely closed. The borders are closed. You cannot, even if you're Australian, you cannot fly from Australia to New Zealand. Thailand is less severe, and you know you can travel for medical tourism if you get a certificate. But it's been painful. We've seen some uptick in our immune program, where patients looking for immune treatments are coming over, and that's directly COVID related. But the interest and the inquiries are strong, but the willingness to actually get out and get on that plane and come over to either Mexico or Thailand or whatever it is been hampered. So it's financially it's been a losing year for us, of course, but you know it's to be expected. The medium plus term, which we consider when we're talking with our board, is that the world now understands that the immune system rules the body. And so we actually feel as though coming out of this, we've accelerated our potential growth by 3 to 5 years just because of the COVID. So that's quite a positive attribute to the process.
A lot of interesting winners in certain ways from COVID, that's for sure. Paul, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, and great presentation, by the way. I just wanted to add a couple things. I think that, well, first of all, it sounds like the reputation of your organization is quite good. And certainly one of the big draws of medical tourism is the cost savings. I think that's, by consensus, that would probably be number one. As far as bringing people over the border, but it also seems to me, just being in this industry, that there's a bit of a challenge with the reputation of say Mexico versus the US as far as quality of medical care overall. I'm not speaking of your organization. Can you address that, and what is that a challenge? Is there education involved? How much education? How are you meeting that challenge?
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. It's a huge challenge. It's in fact it's so important that I neglected to mention it. It's something that we face every day, and the only way in which we deal with it is through education and through testimonials and word of mouth. The exception with the regenerative medicine license, that's a piece of paper we can point to. Otherwise, our procedures are not cheap. So 2 week treatment for Lyme disease starts at $20,000. And at that price point, we have enough opportunity to spend significant time talking to prospective patients. And as soon as they have a conversation with us, after 20 minutes, they realize that that it's an international standard of care, and most of their fears can be allayed. But it is certainly a challenge, and it's a marketing challenge, and we try and use every opportunity that we have to with photographs and quotes from patients. But yeah, it's absolutely a challenge.
Thank you.
Charles, I see your hands up again there.
Thanks, Jeff. I wonder if Jim Graypeck might mind being putting on the spot to talk about that dynamic of attracting customers to the more integrated or functional therapies, given the reluctance by some mainstream doctors to refer in that direction. Jim is developing pavilions in America, not overseas, but Jim, you want to comment on that marketing challenge to attract patients to, in many cases, better therapies?
Yeah, hi, thanks, and thank you for the presentation. Actually, I was trying to raise my hand. That disappeared from my Zoom screen. I don't know what happened. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I work with plenty of practitioners like you're talking about for, that look at the body holistically, and it's really about raising the immune system and so on. In terms of the marketing, in fact, we were looking at working out arrangements when we get going with people like you as well, so we can send people to you that to do those things we can't do here yet, such as stem cells. I mean, a lot of the other things I think we can handle, but again, it all depends. I mean, what people, if you need a 3-week, stay somewhere, then that's not us, but we're hoping to be able to support groups like yourself. And I think the job really, it's our job. And part of what we will be doing is educating people as far as with a little science center and, and so on, why all of this works, why it's scientifically founded, why it's really evidence-based medicine as opposed to, fraudulent studies and so on. I won't, but some of them are okay, but you know what I'm talking about. And I think, I don't know, I mean, marketing, it's something that all of us in the integrative health field have, been dealing with for a long time or working on, because of course the FDA limits what we're allowed to say. But I think we have ways to kind of get around that. I think things are going to open up more, and we'll be able to work together more. That's how I feel, especially now. I really do think that with COVID, there are going to be a lot of changes. I mean, I hope, but I think so in medicine. I mean, in conventional medicine, because a lot of the corruption is being exposed. I mean, certainly there are great doctors out there, and there's great therapies and programs, but there's been a lot of corruption. Everybody knows that. It's the elephant in the room. A pharmaceutical company based, basically. So if we can get past that, which I see coming, we can all benefit from this. And I missed the beginning of the call. I was out, and I don't know if you offer like a vacation plan with your cancer treatment. Are you doing that? Anything like that? Or you have a nice, so it's kind of a vacation, right? Tourism. Come see the place. We'll take care of you a little bit. So,
for the chronic conditions, autoimmune and Lyme, we did actually we were about to sign a lease in February on a 10,000 square foot building overlooking the ocean, and that had a 70-room hotel attached to it. It wasn't ours, at a golf course, and so definitely that is part of the plan.
Right.
For cancer treatment, I mean, it can help. It's a trade-off. There are clinics in especially in Thailand that are resort style, and we absolutely we do have that. We just opened our second clinic in Thailand in a partnership with a large hotel group. They have 600 hotels, including Four Seasons and a few other international brands. And we have plans next year for a resort type environment.
Right.
It is part of it. You have to offer both though. If you do it can't be the only thing that you do.
Yeah,
On your other point in terms of working together, we do have a co-management referral program. There is the brochure, co-management.
Right.
So it's not legal for licensed practitioners in the US to receive referral fees, but we are allowed to pay workup fees and co-management fees, and we've tried to promote this program several times at events and conferences, and it turns out that the doctors are quite reluctant to let their patients go. And so one of our great challenges, and that's something we're working on now, is a major marketing, what they call it a funnel, but a major marketing structure where we present the program, educate the doctors, and rather than just talk to them for 10 minutes, we take them through an intensive. So, I mean, when we're talking about it as from a business point of view, I liken it to one time when I was offered a timeshare at a Marriott vacation resort where, they said, come and have a free dinner. So we're like, okay, let's go and have a free dinner. And then you sit there for 2 hours and you didn't even know what timeshare was. And then at the end of it, you're thinking about, oh, that looks nice. And it's a little bit like that, because the idea of a doctor just sending their patient to Mexico is not an easy one to get across. And so the short interactions that we tried, we took booths at naturopathic conventions, those kind of things. Yeah. And even though our medical director is there talking about cancer treatment and going through our case histories, and extremely credible doctor, and just very, very difficult. So it takes a long time and more effort than one might think.
Hey, I wanted to add one point. I was on a working call with a group I work with, an investment group, and a company called Ryan presented. And because you're talking about stem cells, well, they've been able to actually pull the active part of the stem cell out, exosomes actually, and they have a product called Purified Exosome Product, platelet exosomes, where they've been able to stabilize at room temperature. So, you could just grab them. You don't have to wait. They will hold for a long time. They've already been cleared by the FDA to begin human trials. And they're going to go to replace like lung tissue, muscle tissue, all kinds of things. And I'm thinking, and they're involved with some of the Mayo Clinic people. Maybe because you're in Mexico, you can work with them to get some, to help with the trials or do something with your programs down there. But I can share
possibly.
that.
Thank you. Exosomes are rapidly becoming. I was just looking. I don't know if my screen is still shared, but I was reviewing a paper yesterday, an exosome guide, and there was about 120 different exosomes. Exosomes are likely to overtake stem cells in a lot of condition treatments very, very quickly. We have at least 40 different exosome sources, and it's all happening everywhere. And so, another one is interesting. In Mexico, it's not legal to import. Cells from outside.
Okay.
They have to be produced here.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
So, and there are very good sources. We pay. I think we pay about $15 per 100 million or something for exosomes. It's quite low. So thank you. I mean, please send me the link. We're always looking to look at it. I think that as a side note, clinical trials in Mexico for US companies is a very interesting opportunity, and I think that will enhance medical tourism as well. There was one thing that I didn't mention. No, I don't think I can. I don't think I can say that. That's it. Shall I? Is it Jeff? Shall I hand over back to you?
I have it back. We're just running out of time here, so I was letting you make a final point, if you would.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, the growth of medical tourism globally is a reflection of an information age where patients don't want to wait till their governments tell them that a treatment is safe and effective, and it's an arbitrage. It's like water, it's like water running down a glass. It takes the path of least resistance, and I think that medical tourism as an option for North American customers, so that's US and Canada, is going to increase exponentially, and unless something changes quickly in the US paying system, the co-pays and the contributions that they have to make are becoming so high, as I think it was Charles said at the beginning, or maybe it was Jeff, that medical tourism for all conditions is really a growth industry, and myself and Veritar have taken a pretty substantial gamble and investment into the growth of that business globally and in Mexico.
Well, I'd say that's very good, and you're absolutely right about people wanting to start taking control. I think the veils off of a lot of things in the world these days, that we don't need to rely on government or others. We can just jump into the fray our own self. So thanks so much for being here today, Gideon. That was really quite good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, everybody. Take care.